No matter how far a criminal organisation goes to conceal its illegal activities, uncontrollable factors can bring it all crashing down. This is what befell Vincent Coggins and his associates on the 23rd of May 2020. Coggins and his crew had been operating for many years under the radar, importing drugs through the Port of Liverpool with significant success. This was until their primary stash house was targeted by a rival group from Manchester, resulting in the theft of more than £1 million worth of drugs. The ferocity of the attack left a man with his arm almost severed, and they were forced to call for emergency services. This call to authorities eventually led to detectives connecting the dots. The group's messages were already being monitored, and in the immediate aftermath of the robbery, the group were already plotting their vicious revenge. This is the remarkable story of the downfall of the Coggins organised crime group. Chapter 1. The Veterans. When Edward Robert Jarvis was convicted at Manchester Crown Court on the 9th of May this year, it opened a window into his criminal gang's world. Jarvis had a long criminal history, having already been sentenced to 28 years for trafficking drugs from Venezuela. He and his associates had bought a yacht for £30,000 to sail across the Atlantic and pick up a huge consignment of cocaine. The yacht, named the Pulse, was bought in the Greek island of Rhodes and registered as a British vessel under a false name. Jarvis was said to have travelled to Margarita in March 2000 and stayed in several hotels. During a trial at Liverpool Crown Court 5 years later, prosecutors said several calls were made from his rooms to Colombia before he left the island. The plot was undone when Customs and UK police, who had kept the yacht under surveillance, raided the boat after observing a delivery being made. Andrew Menery, KC, who prosecuted the case, said the 600 kilograms of cocaine seized would have cost Jarvis and his criminal associates around £500,000, but on the streets of Europe would be worth £48 million. However, not all of the gang were jailed for the plot, according to the detectives who were working on the case. A couple of others were key figures in what would eventually become known as the Huyton Firm. The Huyton Firm, named after the part of Merseyside where it is based, has been run for 30 years by two secretive brothers who have gone under the radar until recently. Vincent Coggins and his brother Francis, brought up in Knowsley's Cantrell Farm in the 70s and 80s, built their powerful drug gang from nothing into a bona fide cartel that rivaled criminal factions from Ireland, Eastern Europe and South America. They have a ferocious reputation for violence. The brutality of the Huyton Firm even shocked rivals in Liverpool's notoriously violent criminal underworld. One source told BBC's Panorama that the crime gang were deeply hated by many people because of the level of depravity that they go to instill fear and terror. The brothers seemed to be untouchable up until 4 years ago, when a violent armed robbery took place on one of their stash houses. Chapter 2. The Stash House. The time is 8:54 in the morning. A young man makes a frantic 999 call from a semi-detached house on a residential street in West Derby, Liverpool. He and his dad have just been attacked by masked men armed with a machete and an axe. When the police turn up, there's blood everywhere. The two men inside are keeping unusually quiet, considering they've just been attacked with bladed weapons, seemingly at random. Blood spatter runs from the inside of the house out into the back garden and stops next to a manhole cover. At this stage, there is no mention that they are babysitting over £1 million worth of Class A drugs. However, the police have a secret weapon. They have access to the messages that members of the crime group are sending each other. The group had fallen victim, like so many other crime groups, to the EncroChat hack, when in 2020 French police cracked what was supposed to be a fully encrypted messaging service used almost exclusively by criminals. For 10 weeks, the National Crime Agency in the UK have unlimited access to the messages being shared by the Huyton Group. They show that 30 kilograms of the firm's cocaine has been stolen, a haul worth over £1 million. One of the members asks about the grip, referring to the drugs, to which his colleague confirms that it's been taken. The gangsters are shocked that someone has dared to rob them, and they want revenge. The username, Moonlit Boat, is giving the orders on EncroChat, demanding that the robbers be identified and killed. One particular message from this user appears on the screen, and watching detectives give a wry smile. "Supposed to be boss of the Highton firm, aren't I?" When police later identify him as Vincent Dickie Coggins, one of the pieces of evidence was a photo he had sent on EncroChat of his new coffee machine, identical to the one found later in Coggins' home. Coggins is furious. The messages show that the threat of violence is very real. He begins to plot against anyone who, in his opinion, has gone against him in business. In messages to one of his enforcers, he discusses the different options for torturing him, which gives an incredible insight into the brutality he was capable of. "I'm serious, you know. I want you to come with me to Moz to scare the shit out of someone who has took the piss out of me for years. He owes me millions and he's still having me off. I want you to sit and listen to what he done to me. Then we decide whether we slash him, chop his fingers off or whatever." Later, further messages show Coggins confirming that he has indeed slashed the businessman with a knife, smashed his eyes and took half of his ear and tongue. The most shocking is yet to come. An underworld insider told BBC's Panorama documentary about a particularly extreme case of violence. The gang were looking for a particular individual and had his 7-year-old daughter covered in petrol in front of her mother until the location of his whereabouts was revealed. The day after the cocaine heist, Vincent Coggins gets his hands on CCTV of the robbery from a neighbour's house. The footage shows 3 masked men getting out of a van. A 4th man was carrying a parcel pretending to be a delivery driver. Within 4 minutes, they make their escape with the Highton firm's cocaine. The group's messages show the video was obtained by Thomas Cashman, a local criminal who they're suspected of using to carry out hits. Cashman would later be jailed for a minimum of over 40 years for the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was caught in the crossfire when he recklessly tried to murder Joseph Nee as he ran for cover inside her home. Vincent Coggins orders one of his lieutenants to send the CCTV to everyone they know. He even wants the video sent to a firm of lawyers and to a local media company to enhance the quality of the footage. Within hours, they think they have identified some of the robbers. Problem was, they'd identified the wrong men. Chapter 3. Father and Son. Vincent Coggins is now hunting the men who stole his cocaine. He has identified 4 suspects, 2 of which are a local drug-dealing father and son duo, Brian Maxwell and Brian Maxwell Jr. But he's got the wrong men. The Maxwells had nothing to do with it. In fact, 4 other gangsters were later convicted of the robbery after their EncroChat messages were also gathered by police. OCGTV has already covered the story of the robbery in detail. You can find the link in the description below this video. Even though Maxwell Sr. had not been involved, he is terrified by the threats from the Highton firm. He messages the crime group on EncroChat saying he has a solution to save his family, which was to pay for the lost merchandise through cash and the transfer of property. That was the level of fear that the Coggins brothers had instilled into others in the Liverpool area. That someone was willing to part with over £1 million to settle an issue that they were never involved with in the first place. The Maxwells communicated with Vincent Coggins through a third party, a man who is still due to appear before the courts so can't be identified. Fearing an attack on his son was imminent, Maxwell Sr. sent a proposal to the gang. He knew his son had not committed the robbery, but with the extent of the threat posed by Coggins, he sent him a message to plead his case. "My solution involves me and me alone paying the bill, and then it's me that's been robbed. I'd rather have him than the money, and it won't be in grip because I haven't got it any more than he has. Then it's down to me to find out who done it. Any money I've got means nothing at all if he dead." Coggins then promises Maxwell Sr. that his family will be safe if he pays up. However, he then sends a very different message to his enforcer, a fellow Liverpudlian named Paul Woodford. I'll kill them in a few months when it's all calmed down. Very stressful week. Need a little break, then I come back. Paul Woodford was an extremely willing participant in the enterprise against the Maxwells, sending a chilling message to his boss to ask how many people he wanted killed. Coggins simply replied, 4 dead men walking. Paul Woodford has been linked to other notorious murders in the criminal underworld, having successfully defended himself in court for the murder of Jason Osu, a 31-year-old currency trader and trained pilot who was shot repeatedly by 2 gunmen who stood either side of his car in Beauclair Drive, Wavertree, and riddled it with bullets. The intended target was believed to have been his brother, Mark. Woodford was also a suspect in the murder of Christopher Buster Brady. His remains were washed up on a gravel beach near Benalmadena on the Costa del Sol in 2002. He had been tortured, suffocated, and his lower legs amputated. On 16th of June 2020, before the Highton firm could put their plan into action, and 3 days after the EncroChat service alerted its users to the hack, the defendants were the first arrested by Northwest Regional Organised Crime Unit officers as a result of the intercepted messages. After they were charged, Coggins, Woodford, Earl and Jarvis attempted to have the EncroChat evidence thrown out in a bid which could have impacted hundreds of other cases. In a legal argument seen as a test case for other EncroChat trials, their lawyers claimed the evidence was inadmissible, but their attempt was eventually dismissed by the court. Most of the defendants pleaded guilty to offences, but Jarvis, of Breckside Park, Liverpool, was convicted following a trial at Manchester Crown Court of 2 counts of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail on 9th May 2024. Reporting restrictions on the other cases were lifted on the conclusion of Jarvis's trial. Coggins, of Woodpecker Close, Liverpool, was jailed for 28 years after pleading guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Woodford, of Mile Road, Liverpool, was jailed for 24 years and 6 months, and Earl, of Wallace Drive, Highton, was jailed for 11 years after both pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Paul Glynn, 59, of Croxdale Road West, Liverpool, who was minding the stash house where the cocaine was stored and was attacked in the robbery, was jailed for 11 years and 2 months after pleading guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine. Other members of the OCG were also jailed. They were Darren Tierney of Stockport, who was jailed for 12 years and 9 months, Paul Fitzsimmons of Liverpool, who was jailed for 12 years and 6 months. The 61-year-old arranged couriers and deals with buyers on behalf of the Cogginses and acted as their accountant, bookkeeper and banker. He was described in court as the group's chief financial officer. Kevin Rimmer of Highton was jailed for 16 years. The 57-year-old of Blacklow Brow in Highton was a taxi driver who completed deliveries for the NHS at the height of the COVID pandemic, but used these trips as cover for transporting drugs and cash in case he was stopped by the police amid lockdown restrictions. Dean Burrows was jailed for 16 years after he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He had previously been jailed for drugs offences in 2014. Francis Coggins is currently on the run and is suspected of leaving the country. The downfall of the Coggins organised crime group does highlight in the criminal fraternity it is always best to quit while you're ahead. Even after 30 years of staying below the radar and instilling fear into the community, it was a chance robbery that ended up with the Coggins gang and the robbers behind bars for a considerable length of time. You have been watching OCG TV. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.